So in the last video, in dealing with the ego, we were narrowing down or focusing on one of the tools that the ego uses to keep you in this fight or flight mode, in these very primal thought patterns where you're only concerned about your own survival, and thus cannot be raising your consciousness, or really benefiting yourself in any way, or tapping into any sort of spirituality that'll lead you anywhere. And so that's a tool of the ego that the ego is using. It uses projection. And we're going to talk a lot about the different tools to be aware of so that you can be vigilant, so that you can negate those thoughts as they're coming through your mind. But today, or right now, what we're going to talk about is sort of the positive aspect, or what can we positively plant into our minds rather than what are we trying to take away or negate. What messages are we trying to negate from the ego? Now we're going to know, well, what do we do with that fresh soil once we become vigilant about this ego being overly critical and creating useless problems and things of that nature, and hurting us? What do we do with that furtive soil that's now ready to be planted with something? And it's important. One of the best ways to be able to silence the ego is to be active with your mind and to focus. And we'll talk about being sort of consciously meditating or meditating throughout the day later on. But on a side note, one of the easiest ways to quiet the ego, if you're having a really hard time and the ego is really kind of beating you down and you just can't get away, or you can't get outside of your head, as sometimes people say it, sing a song. The whole point is, though there's two voices, there's only one listener. And so there's only one line, there's only one conduit for those messages to go through. And if you feel that rather than listen at that point, then it goes away. Simple as that. And immediately your consciousness, your heart, will then start taking over and seeing whatever problems it was creating as not so problematic. And so when you sing a song, it's a very simple way to do it, because you have to consciously sing that song. You can't do it unconsciously, and so you're focused on the tune, you're focused on the lyrics, but it doesn't take a ton of focus. So if you're driving or you're doing something that does require a little bit more of your conscious state, but you want to shut that mind up because got in a fight with your mom, or whatever's haunting you, sing songs in your head. Instant cures. Okay, but on a deeper level, the same way that the ego uses these tools, and through social conditioning, or through our nurture as we grow up, through the torments and the suffering that we deal with, all of these things, these are tools for the ego to keep us again into that primal state. So now we want to talk about tools that we can use to bring us to a higher state. And one of the keys to being in a higher state is having more peace in your life. The more peace and security you feel in your life, the more you're able to focus on all kinds of self-improvement, whether it be health, diet, finance, relationship, spirituality, God, whatever the case may be. If you are in a fight or flight mode all the time, and you're constantly thinking about survival, or constantly in a fear state, not even just survival, but a fear state of acceptance, or whatever the case may be, then you could never rise above that. Okay, until you feel that security and kind of get past that. Another good point for children, and I'll just bring this up very, very quickly. My take on children is there's way too much focus often from parents on trying to force their children to want to learn the silliest, simple things that humans do, like going to the bathroom, I don't know, even walking sometimes, getting them walk sooner than they need to, paying attention. Here's the point. The point is, as a parent, if you can just show love and security, the child is programmed to learn better than you will ever be able to teach. But if you force that child to worry about the wrong things, if it's worried about, fear of what's going to happen if he goes to the bathroom wrong, or if it worries about, that it's not getting juice because you're not attending to it, or, I mean, honestly, let me just call a card for a card. If that child is left with a stranger, any kind of stranger, suddenly that child goes into a survival state, wonders if it's going to get juice, food, see its parents again, bathroom, whatever the case may be. All of those things become challenges that take up that child's mind. If that child's mind never has to focus on those things, all of those human instincts will be learned sooner than later. Usually, if you, again, just focus on giving their needs and let the child focus on what they want to obsess with, you will see that their learning will become off the charts. Your point, your challenge as a parent is to create peace so that they are not, time is not wasted on that stress from the child. Same thing goes for an adult. So we're talking about the ego uses conditioning. And if you read about MK Ultra, we're talking about mental conditioning to get you to expect the worst out of life. Well, reverse engineer that, and then we're going to be talking about how to use our expectations, or how to change our expectations so that we're manifesting greater peace, and higher states of living, whatever you want, basically. Okay, so how do you do that? One of the biggest subjects, or one of the biggest problem areas that I confront with a lot of the people that I know through my work, if you will. I'm surrounded by a lot of young people who are impoverished, and I'm also surrounded by a lot of spiritual people, or people who are seeking spirituality, or are sort of, more empathetic, or have like a kindred soul, or whatever the case may be. In both scenarios, we find that abundance is a very, very tough thing for these people to put in their lives and to expect in their lives. And again, abundance, the ability to know that you don't have to fear eating, rent, these type of things that just are the basics of life, okay? The more you have to fear those, the less you can focus on how to battle the ego. The less you can focus on what MK Ultra is doing to you. The less you can focus on the cosmology that surrounds us, okay? So abundance is a very important thing in your life. You need abundance to get to that higher state. And if you look at any of the true avatars or gurus that have passed through our world, that we pass on their teachings, they are teaching you that. They are teaching you that abundance is yours for the taking. Now, how do you take it, though? And so there's a lot of resistance with these types of groups, especially spiritualists, because it's hard for them they're not materialistic. And so they're not concerned about getting a Mercedes or a BMW or anything of that nature because it is a Mercedes or BMW. They may be intrigued by a BMW because it's safe for their family. It's a very safe German car. It's probably the safest car you could buy for your family, maybe. And in that essence, they're intrigued by it. But this idea of constant consumerism is something that a spiritualist is from day one usually against. And so this idea of chasing the dollar is very, very hard for them, or chasing money of any sort, or chasing abundance of any sort. And you shouldn't chase it. It shouldn't become an obsession. It should be something very, very easy, because you do deserve it. But there's a resistance that is in your conditioning that you have to reverse condition. And that's a little bit more than being aware of it and wishing past it. You actually have to do some mental programming as if you were doing MK Ultra on yourself, but for the benefit of yourself and the others around you. It may seem selfish to want abundance in your life, but if you think about most of the people that do have abundance in your life, in the world that you know of, that have ridiculous abundance, these are people that should not, that do not deserve it, that are doing the worst things possible with it. And furthermore, I would rather anyone who's watching this video be more abundant than a Donald Trump, a Kushner, a Hillary Clinton, a Bill Gates, any of these people. I wish any of you to be richer than any of these people, because I know anyone who's watching this video will do better with money, with that abundance. I know if you're watching this video, you will not turn into these parasites, that you will do great things with your money, that you will do great things with abundance, that you will not hog it up and buy 50 Ferraris, that you will give back and you will supply your family with great spiritual knowledge and wisdom that will live on in our world forever. So I want you to have the money. I don't want them to have the money. Someone's got to have the money. That's how you should think about it. More of us need to be in control of the money. So if you don't think you deserve it, or it's not a valid, worthy goal, start changing your mind about that. The other kind of resistance you have is you don't think you deserve it, that you have to do something awe-inspiring. Well, most of the people in this world that do think they deserve it have done nothing to deserve it. They've either inherited it, cheated, stolen it. The mensch, as the Jewish people would call him, who works every day, someone like my dad, they do well. They do very well, but you would hardly call them, the super wealthy of our day. The super wealthy of our day haven't lifted a finger or had a moment of ingenuity or helped anyone around them usually. They're thieves most of the time. My point isn't to be a thief. My point is that money doesn't take a lot of toil. It takes smartness, and it takes the idea that you are not the place that money goes to place to die. As Teal Swan once said, it is a place to flourish. You have to change that mentality. You do not need to be a rock star. You do not need to create the next Apple to have abundance in your life. Okay? Just you being you tomorrow, waking up, you deserve all the abundance in the world. It's yours. Just for being you. That doesn't mean you can just sit around and wait for it to come. But it does mean that it can be easy. And it can take a year, 6 months before you start seeing real abundance in your life. Before you start turning that train around very, very quickly with less work than you could ever imagine. All right, now how do you do it? Well, think about MK Ultra. What do they do to program you to expect the worst out of your life? They use all kinds of the stupidest suggestive programming on TV, in books, in popular culture that gets stuck in your mind. They use Disney. They use cartoons. Okay? You can think of creative ways. I'm going to get you started on just a couple. They may sound silly. The first one may sound really silly to you. I close my eyes. Okay? And I think about money coming from every single direction. Just flowing. Where it's not hard to grab. I can just grab it out of the air anytime I want. Any chance I get, I count money. If I have a $100 bill, I break it up into many bills and I count money as much as I possibly want just to feel it flowing through my hands and understand that money flows everywhere and it can flow to me as easy as it flows anywhere else. It comes and goes. That's what it does. Okay? So you have to start using imagination. Focus. That's a meditation. Okay? Use your mental imagination. Imagine yourself take a $100 bill out of the bank, put it in your pocket, close your eyes, spend it as visually as you possibly can. Then open your eyes, pull out that $100 bill and see that you still have it. All these things. Everything to get you to start expecting more money in your life. Find your trigger points. Okay? You are selfish. That's okay. Those are golf clubs. I love golf. It's a frivolous sport. Yeah, it might help my health, whatever. It's frivolous. But it inspires the fuck out of me. Okay? That's my trigger point. My family is my trigger point. Use those things not in desperation, but imagine yourself in abundance with those things so that you get hungry, thirsty, and you start imagining it. And when you start seeing those things come into your life, you can recognize them and be appreciative of them. And the more you have gratitude of them, you get them. So that's reverse conditioning. Use MK Ultra to the positive, to where you were focusing in meditation, using trigger points. That is what all these belief books are all about, where they're talking about using visual boards and all that. It is just reverse conditioning so that you expect, so that you have your ego expecting those things as well, and you're tricking your ego to play the game with you into abundance. This is how it works. Abundance is anywhere you need it, anytime you need it. You just have to start expecting it. You're going down the rabbit hole, whether you like it or not. What does that mean? When you go down the rabbit hole, you have no idea what to expect. No idea what to expect. Sorry, I'm going to make 2 more points. I apologize. It's kind of a longer video. So when you go down that rabbit hole, you don't know what to expect. You have to kind of let go. And whether you know it or not, when you're flowing on the negative, that's happening anyways. Okay? You are not controlling those things per se. And most of the most important aspects of your life, like breathing, nourishment, the sun rising, these are things you cannot control. That you just depend on some higher force to keep it all going for you. And when you do try to control it, you really mess it up. A great example of this is trying to breathe. If you can right now, try to breathe. Focus on breathing. You'll notice your breath gets really erratic. And it's hard. It takes effort to breathe when you focus on it. But when you don't focus on it, it's the most natural thing possible because you're not controlling it. Well, you're about to go down the rabbit hole, and it's not going to look the way you think it's going to look. So when you go down the rabbit hole for abundance, don't control it. You may get fired tomorrow once you start getting controlled. That happened to me. Nothing turned around for me until I got fired. When I started asking for abundance, the first thing that happened was I got fired because that job was leading me nowhere. It was just a prestigious, it just gave me ego. That's all it was. Then I was free. And all of a sudden opportunities started landing. And when I started recognizing them, things started happening for me. So my point is it may look really weird when you go down that rabbit hole. And that's okay. Last point. One of the worst things about abundance is buyer's remorse. You have to stay away from buyer's remorse. Have the recognition and the discernment to not buy the things that are going to give you buyer's remorse. Or if something does happen where you do have buyer's remorse, you have to forgive it immediately. Nothing is going to stop you from abundance faster than buyer's remorse, than regretting money that is gone. You must forgive it. It's okay to push money out into the world. It comes back, especially if you give it in grace. Give to homeless people. It comes back 3 times as much. Understand that that's how money flows, okay? Point being, though, I lost $400 today. Just left it at the post office. And somebody took it. I don't care how much money you have, $400 lost like that. It's a major kick in the balls. It feels just like losing a lover or someone dying in your family. Maybe for not as long, but at that very moment, it's just like it can never come back. You worked for it, it's gone. Okay? The sooner I forgave it, the sooner money starts trickling back in. The sooner I don't forgive it, the sooner money starts trickling out. I bought a $1,000 computer today, a Mac Pro. Okay? I just raised the price $400 and forgave it and said whoever took that money, they needed it, and God bless them. Okay? No more buyer's remorse. When I got fired and I had to make that turn, I realized I wasn't making enough income. And I was too focused on budget. I was always making monthly budgets and figuring out how much we need to spend and if my paycheck was going to fit into that. That I was living in a mental depravity, that I was putting myself in a point of always needing and always realizing that I didn't have enough money and focusing on the fact that I didn't have enough money. So to change that, I told my wife, you're in charge of the budget from now on. She's the worst budgeter in the world. She never knows how much money we have. It's horrible. But it allows me to free my consciousness and not worry about the budget and just worry about making more money and focusing my attention on just money coming in. Let her be responsible for that because my mental state can't handle that right now without bringing my vibration down. She can. It actually makes her feel more secure. It makes me feel very worried and very tight. I need to feel free so that I can just focus on expanding the revenue generation. That is also buyer's remorse. So hopefully some of these ideas will give you a chance to look at this. If you need further understanding, one of my favorites on this topic is Teal Swan. But again, it's the same as when you look at all the negative connotation that goes involved with programming you into thinking the wrong things. You must plant the right type of programming with conditioning, meaning you have to do silly creative things. over and over and over again. It won't take long. But do them and make it work for you. All right, good luck.